I am Edwin Moses, Assistant Professor of English, Bishop Heber College, India. The topic of today's lecture is Blue Humanities, an emerging field under English studies. So let us try to understand what is Blue Humanities. I would like to begin with this quote: "In studying the sea, we are returning to our beginnings." It talks about the importance of sea in our life from the evolutionary point of view. There are scientific evidences that our source millions of years ago is from the sea. So in studying the sea, we are returning to our beginnings by John Gills. So what is Blue Humanities? Blue Humanities is basically an interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary field like history, philosophy, literature, arts, marine sciences, and environmental studies. So Blue Humanities focuses on the relationship between humans and waters. Waters in all its forms: seas, lakes, ponds, rivers, streams, creeks, estuaries, bogs, etc. So what Blue Humanities tries to do is to rethink humanity's connection to the oceans, the water bodies, not only the physical spaces, but in the context of cultural, historical, and ecological forces in literature, arts, history, and science. Blue Humanities foregrounds the significance of water in shaping human life and identity and imagination. So there are some of the critiques who are associated with Blue Humanities. The famous theorist who introduced this field, Steve Menz, an English professor who coined the term Blue Humanities to describe the vast amount of literature that is produced about the sea. And his seminal work, An Introduction to the Blue Humanities by Steve Menz. And Dan Brayton, a Blue Humanities scholar, advocates for using ocean as a lens to shift away from watery metaphors. And Hester Blum, a scholar who delivered the essay, "The Sea is Not a Metaphor," in 2010. And water as metaphor and memory. So in literature, especially the example that is taken is Dry Salvages from Four Quarters by T.S. Eliot, where sea becomes a metaphor for the vastness of time and the cycles of life and death. Eliot writes, I quote, "The sea has many voices, many gods, and many voices." Right? The vastness of sea is compared to life and death. The immediacy and the ancient nature of the sea evokes human insignificance against its eternal presence. Blue Humanities emphasize on the ocean as a repository of memory and a force that shapes human consciousness. Maritime histories in fiction. A good example for maritime history is the classic novel Herman Melville's Moby Dick, which explores the cultural and existential dimension of the sea. It also talks about whaling as an industry, the philosophical inquiries that is part of the novel, and the famous character Captain Ahab, whose obsessive pursuit of the white whale reflects humanity's fraught relationship with the natural world. And another important work, Rachel Carson's The Sea Around Us. Here, Carson invites readers to see the ocean as a living, interconnected system, anticipating modern ecological concerns. She tries to create awareness among the readers as well as the people in general about the various anthropocentric impacts of humans on the marine ecosystem. Postcolonial perspectives and the sea. So here, a good example is Derek Walcott's The Sea is History. It reframes sea as a site of postcolonial memory. Where are your monuments, your battles and martyrs, and where is your tribal memory source? In that grey vault, the sea has locked them up. So here, the Middle Passage. The sea holds the histories of the Middle Passage and the legacies of colonial exploitation. So the Middle Passage is the route where the African American slaves, especially the African slaves, are carried in ships, right, for various places, and they are used as slaves, and that becomes a post-colonial memory. And Walcott's work challenges dominant narratives, showing how the sea is not just a space of nature, but also it is a space of history, human suffering, and resilience. Water as life and landscape in Sangam poetry. The Sangam corpus, especially the Kurundogai, deals with the life of people in general during the Sangam period, the life of fisherfolk, merchants, and lovers. And the Nathal description of the Nathal landscape shows that. In Kurundagai, I quote, "Her eyes are like the fish that swim in the clear, deep pools of the estuary, yet in their stillness they carry the sorrow of waves that crash on the distant shore." Here, the lovers' expressions, emotions, and nature both resonate in these poems. The poet captures the ecology of the coastal region and its emotional resonance, blending the material and the metaphorical aspects of the ocean. And I would like to also focus on the relationship between aborigines and the sea. Coastal environments are rich, sacred sites for the aborigines. So everywhere there are dream time spaces of the aborigines located all over the coastal regions. And aborigines have their own worldview. Their beliefs, practices, myths are rooted in the landscape of Australia. And I quote, "For an aborigine, every tree, every stone, every creek has a spiritual meaning as well as a cultural history attached to it, identified with their ancestral spirits, with their environments." Here, creek is an inland waterway. That is also important, notable in respect to the Blue Humanities study. And Dungong Coming is a short story by Stradbroke, where she refers to a dugong, a marine animal. So Ujuru Nunukal talks about dugong and aborigines, and dugong is the staple food of the aborigines, and the ecological knowledge of the aborigines with regard to the sea. They don't hunt a marine animal for the pleasure of it. They don't use it for commercial purposes, but they hunt a dugong only to satisfy their vital need for food. And contemporary narratives and climate change. And I would like to give a Indian writer as an example for this contemporary narrative is Amita Ghosh, The Hungry Tide, which is an important novel that talks about the fragile ecological region Sundarbans. It's an archipelago of islands where human intervention, human vulnerability, environmental vulnerability, and human displacement and resilience in the backdrop of nature, tigers, snakes, and crabs is the focus of this work. And Elizabeth Rush's Rising Dispatches from the New American Shore combines personal narrative with environmental reporting to reflect on rising sea levels and human stories that are entwined with these changes, the contemporary changes. And what is the relevance of Blue Humanities? It is ecological awareness and climate change. The Blue Humanities is crucial for the understanding of humans' relationship with the sea and the marine biodiversity loss, rising sea level, ocean acidification, the current environmental problems are easily discussed through Blue Humanities. And today, Blue Humanities is very much important because we are facing the extremes of climate change, excessive rainfall, excessive flood. All these things are problems we are facing today. And Blue Humanities gives an interdisciplinary insight. This field bridges disciplines such as literature, history, environmental studies, and marine sciences. And this multi-interdisciplinary approach fosters a holistic understanding of aquatic environments and how it is utilized and also protected, and focus on marginalized voices. Blue Humanities also emphasizes the stories of marginalized communities whose lives and livelihoods are intricately tied to waters. And it brings attention to indigenous knowledge systems, right? Small island nations and coastal communities, the fisherfolk, for example, in the globalized discourse, they are not part of the globalized discourse, and these Blue Humanities as a critical tool brings into focus the marginalized voices. And lastly, Blue Humanities encourages new ways of imagining sustainable futures. So Blue Humanities will help in achieving our sustainable goals It fosters critical reflections on stewardship to take care of this planet Earth, responsibility and ethical implications of humanity's impact on aquatic system. And the field of blue humanities is open like the sea for us to explore. Thank you.